Science in the Bible. So it's been, like I said before, the studying on my part has been a lot of fun. Don't know if the class is worth anything or not, but the studying has been fun. So last week we kind of finished off with the comment that science is a double-edged sword. You know, there's a lot of good things that come out of science, and it's really accounts for how comfortable of life we live, and this nice building and the air conditioning, and hopefully the fact that you can hear me in this large room. But at the same time, it's created some of the worst catastrophes that we've ever seen. So it seems like every time science discovers something cool, that we can do something good with it, then somebody else figures out how to do something bad with it. So, I mean, some of the things that come to mind is nuclear energy. Can be a great thing, can't it? But it can also be a really bad thing in the hands of the wrong people. And then, of course, who gets to decide who the wrong people are? It can be tough, can't it? So it's just this, you know, you just never know one way or the other. I'm glad science is there. I love it. I don't consider myself a scientist, but I certainly love when they create new things that makes my life easier and better. You know, cell phones, it's almost like when you go out without your cell phone now, like you feel naked, because you don't have your cell phone with you. I'm not connected. And so, again, a good thing and a bad thing. You know, one of the things that Brad points out in the book, and somebody came up last week and told me in class that Brad's actually been here to speak. Wished I'd been here. You know, it sounds like it would have been a lot of fun. So probably a lot of things maybe you've already heard because you've had him speak here. That's cool. We don't remember a thing? Well, you remember what the 3 rules of learning are, right? Repetition, repetition, and repetition. So, well, some people are slower learners, but and I know people who will take offense at what I'm about to say. I don't know if any of them are here. I just know that in other places where I've lived, people took offense to it. And that is, our educational system really is leading us away from God. It's not really leading us toward God. There was a time in our country when it did, but it doesn't anymore. You know, some of those arguments are, well, if we give time to Christianity, we'll have to give time to Buddhism and Hinduism and you name it. We'll have to give them equal time. You know what? I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. The reason I don't agree with that is because I'm convinced that Christianity is true. And if Christianity is true, then as far as I'm concerned, nobody else gets equal time. In fact, I don't care if they get any time at all. But that's just me. I know our system says we just have to give people equal time. So let's just don't do anything because we can't go into all of them. Or we even see in our educational system today where maybe there is a lot of emphasis that's being placed on learning about the Muslim religion, but nothing about Christianity because it's the religion that's in the news the most lately. So they go that way. You know, this is really sad. If it were not for God, where would science be? Would we have any science if it wasn't for God? What was that? He's the author of science. There you go. He's the author. I mean, there would not, if there weren't a God, there wouldn't be a science. Students of science who admit their faith, that their belief in Christianity, their belief in God, are ridiculed. They're ridiculed by their teachers in the school system. They're ridiculed by their fellow scientists who have come to the conclusion that God couldn't have anything to do with all of this. And that's one of the things that Brad points out, because he is a scientist and he had to go to school to become one. And he endured that. People giving him a hard time and teasing him and belittling him because he believed in God. I have a cousin that wanted to be a physician. Now, he went to Harding University to do his undergraduate work. While he was there, anytime he got the opportunity to take a truly elective class, in other words, he could just take whatever he wanted to, he had to plug a hole with a class. Anytime that came up, he took a Bible class. His dad taught at Harding Academy. His sister worked for one of the deans that was there. So that's what he did. He took those extra Bible classes. When he went to try to get into med school, and I don't know what trying to get into med school is like. I have no clue. But Kevin just walked in, so you can ask him. But when he tried to get into med school, the people that were on this panel that he went before, they looked at his transcripts and they said, you know what, it looks to us like you're a Bible student instead of a med student. We're not interested in having you in our program. Simply because he took extra Bible classes. He had taken all the prerequisite science kind of stuff, biology and all that, and he had excelled at it. I mean, he was a straight A student. But simply by taking all that extra Bible stuff, they wouldn't consider him for med school. And you know what? That may just be one med school. I'm not saying that that's the problem across the system, but for him, it kept him out of med school. So the more science figures out how things work, the more the people who are involved with science are convinced that God does not exist. It seems like every time they are successful in figuring something out, they pat themselves on the back and say, look at us. We figured this out. And because we figured it out, therefore, it can't be from God. I have to tell you, of course, you guys know this is close to my family, but I pray often that God will reveal a cure for Alzheimer's. It's out there somewhere. I believe that. And I think eventually science will probably figure it out. But you know what? They're only going to figure it out when God decides to reveal it to them and lead them in the right way. And so instead of having these great discoveries and giving God the glory, giving God the credit, and being amazed at how wonderfully made everything is, they just go, oh, look at us. We got that figured out. We're good. We don't need no God. And that just seems to be their attitude. One of the things that science struggles with is the concept of eternity. And it's really kind of funny. Not humorous. It's interesting or odd that they feel that way, because really, if scientists will honestly stick with scientific theory, and this is one of the points of Brad's book, if they will do that, God is the conclusion. It really is interesting. So, as I said earlier last week, science teaches that something cannot come from nothing. And of course, that's kind of what the non-believers are saying about us. Because God spoke the world into existence and there was nothing there before that, then that can't happen. So let's talk about that for just a moment. So the very fact that something exists. Now realize they teach that something can't come from nothing. So the fact that something exists, we're all here, we exist, the fact that we're here means something has to be eternal. Because if something can't come from nothing, but something's here, that means it's always been here. Can't have come from nothing. So it's always been here. So that's kind of step number one. So right at this first level right here, science must conclude that eternity exists. That something has always been here, because it couldn't have come from anywhere else, so it's always been here. So, what is it? What is it that's eternal? Everything that man is currently aware of obeys the second law of thermodynamics. You guys know what that is? Someone tell me what the second law of thermodynamics is? I know, this is a Bible class. Why are we talking about that? What's the second law of thermodynamics? Everything's running down. Everything is running down. It's deteriorating. It's coming apart. Everything that exists right now obeys this law. Everything runs down. And I would even tell you that that's supported biblically. Let's turn over to Hebrews chapter 1. If I can get my numb fingers to stop in Hebrews. Gone by it like 3 times already. Let's start in verse 10. It says, "And you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. And they will grow old like a garment. Like a cloak you will fold them up, and they will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will not fail." Let's try over in Isaiah 51. I read verse 6 here. Isaiah 51:6. "Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look on the earth beneath. For the heavens will vanish away like smoke. The earth will grow old like a garment, and those who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not be abolished." You know what? The scientists have one thing right. They say they're going to last forever. And they're right about that. But it's not because of their scientific findings. It's because God said so. Finally, let's read something out of Psalm 102. I'm going to start reading in verse 24. "I said, O my God, do not take me away in the midst of your days. Your years are throughout all generations. Of old you laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure. Yes, they will all grow old like a garment, like a cloak. You will change them, and they will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will have no end." I suppose his years won't have an end either. But anyhow, so the scripture supports the concept of that second law of thermodynamics, right? It's all going to wear out. It's running down. It's not going to last forever. So I have an equation. It's not necessarily a mathematical equation, but it is one that it's kind of a thought process that we have to make sure we pay attention, because I had to read it a few times to make sure I got it right. So consider this. Something exists today. Now, we've talked about this already. Something exists today. Therefore, something must be eternal and has always existed. Now, we've already talked about that. Now, something is eternal. That means it doesn't wear out. It's not going to run down. And it was not created because it's been here forever. Therefore, something violates scientific laws. Specifically, that second law of thermodynamics. Something is breaking that law. Something violates that scientific law, so therefore, something exists outside of the observable laws of science. Does anybody disagree so far? Something has to be outside the observable laws of science. You know what? You may be right. I don't happen to think so, but I'm certainly capable of being wrong. I think before God spoke this into existence, there was nothing out there. And I think when God gets done with it, there won't be anything out there either. We'll be in heaven, wherever heaven is. That's a spiritual world. So the final part of this equation is because we can conclude that something eternal is outside the observable laws of natural science. So you think about that. Starts off with something can't come from nothing, and since something exists, therefore there has to be eternity. If there has to be eternity, that means things aren't winding down. Things aren't coming apart. They're not wearing out because they're eternal. And if something is eternal, then that's outside the observable laws of science. I think it's a pretty good way of stating it. I don't know that you could come to any other conclusion, although I'm confident that some scientific types would certainly try. You might not like the way all that adds up, but I don't see any other way to come to any other conclusion. I think it's indisputable. So most textbooks these days, where do they start with the origin of all things that are? Start with the Big Bang. And you know what? Even at that, they kind of start like mid-bang. They don't really go back beyond that because they don't know. You ask them, where did this mass come from that blew up? I don't know. In fact, some of them, when you get to that point, say, well, where did this big mass come from that blew up? What will they tell you? I don't know. You may have to ask God that question. Oh. And then secondly, what caused it to blow up? It was just sitting out there minding its own business and then it blew up. I don't know what caused it. And you know what? They don't either. That's why they have to kind of start mid-bang, because they don't really have a guess even at what goes on behind that. Now, just in the interest of honesty, which I always try to be, hope you guys know that about me, and openness, I want you to know that I do believe that, yes, God could have used the Big Bang and evolution to create where we are today. I believe God could have done that. He has the power to do that. I don't think he did, but I believe that he could. On the other hand, I would also contend that I believe, and I think you guys probably will too, although we don't, but we could, that God really just created everything that we see right here just a few seconds ago, and he created us with memories. That all the things that are in our mind never really happened, but he just created us with those memories. You see, my God has the power to do that too. Now, I don't think he did that either, but he could have. He could have. And he could have used a Big Bang. I just don't see any evidence to support that concept. God is powerful, and you know what? There's probably lots of other ways he could have done this, but he didn't. So, I said this last week, I'll say it again right now. Somebody is really, really, really wrong about creation, because we have such wildly opposing ideas about how this happens. Somebody just has to be wrong. Okay? I mean, if you ask 3 people how much is 2 plus 2, and you get 3 different answers, at least 2 of them are wrong. And possibly the third one's wrong. Maybe everybody said 10, 11, and 12. I don't know. But at least 2 of them are wrong. So realize this, and I think this is I think this is something we are challenged with in our world today. It's not politically correct to tell somebody that they're wrong. Is it? Like, well, who are you? Who are you to say I'm wrong? Well, you know what? It doesn't really matter it doesn't matter what this says. And if this says it, then I can feel pretty good about repeating it. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's between them and God. It's not that I've judged them. It's not that I've tried to make them sound like they were stupid. It's not because I'm such a smart person, because I'm not. It's just I know what the book says. And I believe what the book says. But in our world today, boy, pointing out the fact that somebody else is wrong about something can be a political quagmire. Since we're talking about science, let's mention the law of cause and effect. In other words, this happened and therefore it came from this action. This action caused this outcome. This law recognizes that for every material effect, there must be an adequate cause that existed prior to the effect. No one would ever suggest that a mole dug the Grand Canyon. It just wasn't done by a mole. I did watch this Genesis history movie yesterday. Is that right? Yeah, we watched it yesterday. So, it's interesting. What's that? Yeah. It was interesting to hear them talk about the Grand Canyon. So, anyhow, the effect, that is the Grand Canyon, is so large, that's the effect, that something the size of a mole could not be the cause. So you kind of get where this is going. We've got this really, really, really big effect called the Grand Canyon, and we've got this really small little animal called a mole, and there's just no way that a mole could do that. So you probably already know where this is going. When you have a really, really, really large effect, there had to be something really, really powerful as the cause. Couldn't be something small, couldn't be something insignificant. Now let's talk about the universe. That was one of the things I hadn't thought about until I watched that movie yesterday. The universe is billions of light years across. Of course, a light year is how far light travels in a year, and that's a long way. So it's billions of light years out there. So we wouldn't, if the Earth were only 7,000 or 8,000 years old, or 5,000 or 6, or whatever, if it was just in the thousands, we wouldn't be able to see the light from those yet, because it takes light billions of years to travel the distance. So something really massive, when you consider the universe, the size of it, which we probably don't really know the size of it, but it's big, and there's a lot of stuff out there. The cause for that effect had to be something absolutely massive, had to be something that was incredibly, incredibly powerful. And of course, for most of us, hopefully all of us, the one thing that comes to mind is God. God would be the only thing that had the power, the only cause that could create an effect that big. And before you say, okay, because this is where scientists go, what caused God, then be sure that we reread the law of cause and effect. It references material things. God is not material. God is not subject to the law of cause and effect. He's not subject to it, because it only talks about the material things. So in an odd turn of events, science provides all the evidence we need of a supreme being. We have to pay attention. We have to study. We talked about this last week in Romans chapter 1. The very things that we see around us. Nature itself speaks volumes about God. That's what it says. We see the evidence. As Christians, we see that. A large portion of the people who are in the scientific world don't. They look at it and think, oh, that's cool, let's figure out how it works and see how we can work it into the whole concept of evolution and the Earth being approximately, or the universe, I'm sorry, being approximately 13.7 billion years old. But realize, see, that has become their starting place. That's their start. When they start studying anything, they already have the minds made up that the Earth is 13.7 billion, or the universe is 13.7 billion years, and so they work out solutions to their problems that fit into that concept of billions and billions of years. So what does your worldview say? Does your worldview contain a supreme being? I certainly hope so. And it really should for scientists. I mean, it really should. It is so obvious that there is a supreme being. And science itself proves that. You know, Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. We here in this room, we don't have a problem with that. We feel really good about that creation scene. Most of us, not all of us, most of us feel pretty good about the 7 days of the creation being 7 days. But what do some people who are trying to make science and the Bible fit together, what do they say about those days? What was that? Longer than a day. And how long? But for them to be consistent with where they're going, it has to be 7 days that are millions, billions, I don't know. But there are Christians, and you probably know some of them. I'll be shocked, actually, if you don't know some of them. And I'm not belittling them, because I want you to notice one thing about them. I call them Christians. Okay? And I believe they are. But there are Christians today who really believe that God used the Big Bang, used evolution, and that what we read in the first couple of chapters of Genesis was actually billions and billions and billions of years just covered up in the first chapter or two of Genesis. And then we start kind of recording some time from there moving forward. And so I think for the most part they concede that, yeah, you know, going back to Adam's life, we can only account for a few thousand years, but, you know, God used this whole process of that evolution to get us here where we're at. Now, you know, you guys can probably come up with some other things. One of the things that jumps to my mind that makes that a little bit difficult is, other than the Bible doesn't seem to say that, but one of the things is, why did all that evolution just end up with 2 people? I mean, it just seems to me that there would have been lots of people. It doesn't make sense in my mind when I listen to how scientists say things work, and I look at other ideas about evolution that they profess. It doesn't make any sense that billions and billions and billions of years of evolution would come down to 2 people. There should have been a lot of people. And maybe the people who believe that say, well, there were a lot of people. I haven't actually asked them that question. They might believe that there were a lot of people. And that God just kind of chose out Adam and Eve as an example and used them to build his Genesis story. I have to tell you, and I really, you know what, I have Christian brothers and sisters who believe in the concept of the Big Bang and the evolution, and I love them just as much as I love all my other brothers and sisters, and they are my brothers and sisters. So I am not trying to belittle them. I am telling you vehemently that I disagree with them, but I am not in any way trying to belittle them. I respect them, I love them, and they are my brothers and sisters. I don't personally think that they're going to lose their soul over that particular concept. But I do believe that they're wrong. So this poses an interesting question then. If I have a brother or sister who is kind of a creationist, who believes that God uses or did use the Big Bang and the evolution to get to where we are today, what duty do you think we have to that brother or that sister? Awful quiet. What's that? Let them know the truth? Okay. What else? What was that? Help them find it, Jordan? Yeah. Probably. George said if we were there when the Garden of Eden popped up, we probably would have heard it. So, yes, ma'am. That's what Scripture says. Right. 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 So the earth was created full grown. That is correct. That is correct. Right. Well, let me say something that's going to sound like I'm in defense of them. If you study science and you learn a lot, and you learn about dating methods, and the scientific evidence indicates to you that a particular or several particular dating methods are true, in other words, they fit the scientific model, they can, do something like taste, touch, feel, measure, hear, and all that sort of stuff. They can do all that with it, and then they can replicate it and say, yep, every time we do this is how it works out. Then you can understand, I think, I do, why they would come to the conclusion that the earth is billions of years old. Because look, we've studied it. We've dated this stuff. We know, how much or how fast carbon-14 deteriorates. And so we can see how far it has deteriorated, and we can go from there and back up and figure out how old something is. So, you know what? It's not, and this is just what I'm trying to say about our brothers and sisters. It's not like they just woke up in some sort of la-la land. I mean, let's be honest. You don't want them thinking that about us. We didn't just wake up in some la-la land. And we probably shouldn't think that about them either. They've come to this conclusion in a way that they think is fair and honest. I just happen to disagree with them. I think that they've missed some evidence. But that's my belief. That's my conviction. But I would go back to this. Did you start to say something? Or you just scratching your nose? Okay. Hey, don't do that at an auction. You may have just bought something for $1 million. Exactly. I'm glad you brought that because I was thinking about that a while ago, but my mouth goes faster than my brain most of the time. So by the time I got around to it, I forgot it. Oh, yeah, I agree. The morning and an evening was a day. It is what it says in the creation. That's one of the reasons I feel the way I do. It's because it doesn't just say 7 days, it defines what a day is. Right, right, right. And so the order of things in the creation are important because it's almost like a building block, I guess is what you're kind of saying is you got to have this one so you can have this one. Right, right. Didn't produce the right. Didn't create light before he didn't create the plants before he created light. They needed the light. Yeah. Okay. A lot of this is about your worldview. And hopefully your worldview includes a supreme being. We are going to talk some about the worldviews that are out there. The five most common ones are naturalism, the belief that everything can be explained through processes and nature. Pantheism, the belief that any concept of God is normally abstract, some vague cosmic force. Theism, the belief in and worship of a supreme deity, sometimes called monotheism. Polytheism, the belief and worship of multiple gods. And then postmodernism, the philosophical belief that truth just can't be known. It doesn't matter what we do, we don't ever really know the truth. So with these, and there's other worldviews, yeah, this is the most common ones. Is anyone surprised that we have a world full of very confused people? Because we have people over here saying multiple gods, worship the sun, the moon, the stars, the water, everything. Got people over here saying, you can't know what the truth is. No matter what you do, you can't learn anything. I mean, you can't really know truth. You just can't. Then you got us. We're saying, hey, there's only one God. But even at that, people call us polytheists, right? Because the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they can't get their mind around the idea that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are three but one. So some people call us polytheists. And then the naturalism folks who just believe everything can be explained by science. So yeah, there's a whole lot of really confused people out there. And what do a lot of people in the world do when they get really confused about something? I don't know. There's just so much stuff out there I can't figure it out. I'm just going to not worry about any of it and get on with my life. That's kind of the attitude that we get from a bunch of them. Okay. We will pick up there next week. Appreciate you guys being here.